How do you find the will to fight back against a world that wants to keep you sedated, average, and stuck in place? Join us for the tools and strategies you need to create a life of abundance, discipline, and high achievement. This is the Tactical Empire with Jeff Smith.
All right, guys, welcome to the next episode of the Tactical Empire. I am here with my friend Stacy Raske, and I could not be more excited to introduce her to you guys. She is a veteran and of the Army, an Army veteran, excuse me. She
Thank you.
is a badass executive coach and the owner of InFLOWential. It's executive coaching company mindset. We'll hit on many topics. They do a lot of things. She is the self-proclaimed master of mind-fuckery. So I am excited to get in here and talk to you, Stacy. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to have this chat. So yeah.
Oh, me too. Me too.
So
I was super excited when you hopped on my calendar. So let's just chop it up and hear about what your company does and kind of what the impetus was to kind of start that company.
Yeah, absolutely. So InFLOWential and everything that is under our umbrella of InFLOWential is actually really brand new. But what I realized last year is I'd built two really solid brands and it was just time to split them, right? The inevitable point of when you build a personal brand and you want to scale.
Yep.
Well, when you're in a service industry like coaching and mentorship, that's the limiting factor for most of us. And so what I did was split it into creating this InFLOWential as a company, which I'd already built that brand and moved all of my courses, my coaching, all of my coaching team, my clients, like everything that we do as far as events, transformation, experiences. I mean, from fishing charters to, international retreats to weekend events, and obviously our flagship container, which is our InFLOWential Mastermind, which is our 12-month amazing network. We just call it the family. It's the InFLOWential family. So we have that over there. And the reason I did that is because, again, that way I'm able to have something that's not the Stacy show, that I'm able to really highlight the genius of everybody on our team and far beyond everyone in our ecosystem, and makes it ultimately that is a business that's not only scalable, but sellable versus my Stacy Raske brand and business. So I kept that company, and that's all the stuff that's tied to me, the person. So it's my speaking, my books, and then any like corporate leadership training and things like that. So it just kind of made sense.
Yeah, that's a super important point. A lot of people that start out, like we do similar things, and like a lot of people start out, and that's a decision that you kind of eventually have to cross that path. Like, how do you want to be a business, or are you Tony Robbins who can't step off stage because ticket sales are going to drop by 80% if Tony Robbins is not Tony Robbins, right? So that's an excellent point for anyone getting into the coaching space, mentoring space. You do have to think about scale. And a lot of people in our network have done a great job with that and built standalone businesses outside of their personal brand. And you're definitely at the top of that list. So that's a super important tip. So I appreciate you bringing that to them. How did all this get started?
Yes, right. How do I specialize in mindfuckery? Well, I was my first client.
Yep.
So really what's amazing is my rock bottom moment was only 7 years ago. People meet me now, they're like, of course you've been doing this forever. And I'm like, nope. But I leaned into the journey. I mean, we're all high performing alpha leaders, and it's that drive that really has me constantly leaning into how can I find the hack, the shortcut, the optimization the solution to speed up the process. And then for me, everything that I learn on my own journey, I then funnel that right to my clients, you know. And for those of us who are in the place of mentorship, coaching, consulting in that way, in any type of transformation, really, we can only take our clients as far as we are willing to go ourselves. And so that's one of those things I always tell people is like, if you're ever choosing to invest in a mentor or a coach, which everyone needs to, make sure that they have their coaches and mentors.
Yeah, that's a super important point, because there's a lot of people that I've ran into in the field that don't.
I know.
And it's really a conflict of values, truly. I mean,
yeah, they're not leading by example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, the rock bottom moment was really the culmination. I had 10 years after I got out of the Army. So I got hurt in Iraq, medically discharged, went to college, ended up just building the life of shoulds, you know, the whole American dream, which for me, the American dream ended up being a prison because it wasn't anything that was really reflective of my truth. But all of my childhood trauma created a slew of unhealthy coping. I mean, I was never taught things like boundaries or confidence or esteem or anything like that. So I was the people pleaser. I was the consummate high achiever, always looking for external validation, which is a really slippery slope as you eventually enter adulthood. And so I built this life of shoulds. And so hiding that pain of who I truly was, I avoided and numbed out with everything under the sun. It was food, drugs, alcohol, social media, television, work, because, you know, workaholic is totally socially acceptable. And I mean, even at my worst, self-harm, just anything to change how I was feeling in the moment. And then I just had this rock bottom moment where I was just basically ended up being in full personal accountability and responsibility with myself of like really who I'd become. And that it was the choices that I made that led to really, really hating myself to the degree that I was. And it was really the last time that I was suicidal. But thankfully I passed out drunk, woke up the next day, and it was like a light switch was flipped. And I was like, okay, guess what? I am done. And I'm done trying to control anything other than myself. Well, a lot of us really driven, high performing, self-made people, we come from some shit. And a lot of our fuel is that baggage. However, what ends up creating a lot of success for us ends up being the exact limiting factor to us being able to scale to the next level. And it really, for most of us, are grade A control issues. And most of them are so super subtle. And those control issues combined with a ton of hustle, which hustle is a control issue, but we can get into that. But when you put all that together, right, it can create a lot of success. However, there's always a limit because we end up burned out, maxed out on time, energy, all the stuff, really imbalanced and compartmentalized in our success. And I did that. As soon as I started my business, oh my goodness, I was completely restarting my trauma journey because nobody said, hey, by the way, entrepreneurship is a constant stream of all your bullshit and triggers, so be prepared.
Yep.
Nobody told me that.
100%. Man, yeah, that's all of that is incredibly relatable. I came out of the military. I was a chaos seeker. So like I was able to very quickly compartmentalize like success and drive forward while like lighting the world on fire in different areas in a negative way. And so I mean, that's very relatable, but I mean, we often build our own prisons because we're just trying to go fast and not do the work because it's like that compromise of your decisions on a regular basis. Like, oh, this will be fine today or this time, right? They get you in, for me, partially in the professional world, it was just seeking money. And I was like, okay, the fastest avenue to money is this opportunity, right? And like, I can go perform and and what it got me into was it built my own prison around me, because I was miserable, because it wasn't, I didn't seek purpose and then allow the money to come to me. It was, I wanted to seek money and not worry about the purpose. So that just exacerbated all of my other issues, right? So I was blowtorching the rest of my life because I was miserable over here, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's really interesting is, you know, and I say this a lot too, is a lot of people, when you look at the demographics who tend to get into entrepreneurship, and especially those who come from the military, you know, so you look at the demographics who join the military, most of us join the military fucked up. We're trying to get away from stuff, right? Like trauma, abuse, instability, poverty, whatever the case may be. So we're already having like the childhood programming, not the healthiest or most optimal to begin with. Then we get into entrepreneurship. And for those of us who are the quintessential alpha leaders, and when I refer to the alphas, it is not the negative association of an alpha where it's like this ego driven or arrogance or even automatically extroverted or outgoing. That's not the case. It's just that natural leadership tendency. And what we have is a high sensitivity, a very high empathy to want to do something big to better the world in some way. We want to help people because we come from some shit, but balance that sensitivity with the high sensation seeking. That's that drive. That's that constant need for stimulation that looks like ADD or ADHD. But when you combine the two and really funnel them into something amazing, we can actually massively create a ton of success in this way that feels effortless, you know, this sort of effortless flow, rather because we're no longer making things so hard. But the challenge is flipping that switch, because a lot of what we've done in the past is actually our trauma response that's created a lot of it. You know, we lean into the drive, the high sensation seeking, because it's actually, we're staying elevated in this trauma response. So most of the people that I meet, they think they're a high performer, but what they really are is high functioning. Yep. It just, that high functioning creates a ton of results. And that was me. Well, yeah, of course I have no boundaries. So what am I doing? Working all the time. But that lack of boundaries is part of our trauma response, the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze.
So how do you suggest you get started on the path? I mean, I don't want to interject. You're the pro here. So,
but as are you, right? You've done your work. So anyone who does their work is a pro in their own right.
But it's your time to shine. So, but yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, like, you have to dig deep on like why. For me, it was, I had an upper limit problem. I kept banging off the same fucking ceiling over and over again, and I'd have to rebuild it, and then boom, same cycle again, over and over. So for those people listening that may be struggling with stuff, how do you suggest you start the journey to doing the work on yourself?
So, I mean, here's the thing. I think the number one thing is looking at how quickly do you want to get results? That's really the first question to ask ourselves, because that is going to be a huge divergence in the actions you take, the next steps that you take to really go inward and do the work to eliminate the upper limit, to eliminate the invisible ceiling, or as what I see a lot in my ecosystem are the sabotage cycles. Every time we create all the success that we want, on the back end is when high performers tend to sabotage. So the first question to ask yourself is, how quickly do you want results? Because then that's going to help you know, do I hire help or am I going to DIY it? And the most important thing is the results for you is not about fixing the problem. It's what is your big why? What's your big vision? Where are you going? Who are you called to be? How are you called to impact the world? And if that's the fire that's fueling your motivation to make changes and be better, that's when I highly recommend finding that person to invest in working with, because they're your shortcut. Since 2018, I have constantly had a coach or a mentor, no less than 1 up to 4 at any given time. That's why I've been able to do so much in such a short period of time. To go from my first 6-figure year to a multi-million-dollar empire in 2.5 years, pretty much as a solopreneur up until this year, pretty crazy. And it's always been leaning into doing the inner work. That's investing in that support, guidance, and help. Now, granted, some of us, it's not in the budget, or we're just not at that place yet. So if you're doing the DIY, then it's really about strategically choosing the right books, the right things to feed your soul. Who are you listening to on YouTube and podcasts? What are you reading? Books from all of these amazing entrepreneurs and leaders who've walked the path that are going to give you those exercises and resources to help. But you've got to be really dedicated to doing the work that, not just consuming, but implementing. And with a mentor or a coach guiding you, they're going to make sure you're actually doing the work.
Yeah. I think that, you bring up a good point. I think the reason most people are stuck in their own shit, though, is because of exactly it's because we're inundated with inputs all the time. And the inputs allow us to sedate. You talked about social media and booze and all this other shit. Like those just allow us to pass the time. Mm-hmm. And you never have to come to those big questions, right? And so when you talk about all the things that you just talked about, podcasts, books, who you're listening to, things like mm-hmm. that, like it really starts, in my opinion, with evaluating your inputs mm-hmm. and then your avoidance triggers. Like, what are you avoiding? But like, also, what are you consuming?
Well, and at the end of the day, there's only one thing that everybody avoids. Same thing, every single person. And it is responsibility. That's it. That's why I'm a boundaries expert, because I had none. What are boundaries? It's just being in ownership of what you are responsible for and letting go of all the stuff you're not responsible for, AKA control. Mm-hmm. When you are willing to take control of what you actually have control over, which is you, and let go of trying to control all the stuff that's not within your control, then everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes. We are a society of removing responsibility, right? It's always placing blame, responsibility, or ownership on someone or something else. And this is old. You look at the way the medical system and the education system, all of it is designed for us to be trained in that way, to be sheeple, right? It's just the way it's designed. So, we've got to learn to step into that place of taking our power back. And that's ultimately where our power is what do I actually have control over? Am I utilizing that control to create the results I desire? But the scary piece means that if I start taking control of me, that means I've also got to be responsible for the results that I create. I've got to be responsible for the vision that I'm committing to. I've got to be responsible for the purpose I'm called to, embody. I've got to be responsible for all of the decisions that I make and the steps I take along the way to make that happen, or not, because obviously we're all pros at failing.
Yep.
So the shift for me was when I was willing to take responsibility, not only for my goals and my vision, but take responsibility for learning as much as I could along the way. I was no longer failing. I was no longer on anybody else's pace or timeline. It was like, all right, what can I learn? And every time I was willing to sit and actually experience the emotions I was feeling, not avoid it, experience, like feel it, process it, release it, learn the lessons, and move forward. None of us that, I mean, it was just this simple process every time. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Just being present with all of the shit, not judging it, not judging it, just saying, okay, this is a messenger. What's the message? And the message is, okay, here's a lesson I need to learn. And that's, again, how we're able to optimize in such a short period of time. But underneath it all is this willingness to take responsibility, to take control over ourselves and be responsible for what we want to create in the world. And it's scary as hell.
I agree with that. I think that it starts with just a massive heightened awareness. Like you have to be able to develop that. Like, how are you reacting on a regular situation, whatever it is? Like, are you yelling at the kids? Do you feel angry? Do you feel anxious? What are your feelings? People don't like, the world is so noisy. It enables us to fucking avoid all of this shit always. And that's what leads to everybody's problems. Because I mean, it all starts and ends with you between your ears, and that is it. And once you can start evaluating those feelings that these situations are emoting from you, like, why are you feeling this way? Like, how did you get into the last shitty situation you were in? I guarantee there's a series of events that you can ding, ding, ding. You can probably write them down. It started with this. That person flipped me off in traffic. Then I went there. Then
You can actually map out your sabotage cycle that happens as a reaction from a trigger in the moment, that some of our old shit that we spent a lifetime avoiding. But you're right. It's having the self-awareness, because that's 80% of the work.
Yep.
People come to me and they're like, oh my God, it feels so overwhelming. I was like, love, hold on a second. Keep in mind, you've done all this other work. All we're doing is dialing in your 1%.
Yep.
We're breaking down the walls between the compartments in your life, in your business, in your relationships, because we're breaking down the walls internally. Once you integrate all of you, everything external integrates. And literally that's all we're doing, is just the 1% optimization. It just feels like a lot.
Then you have to program it over and over. You have to think of your brain like a supercomputer. And once you figure out your vision and your values, and like, then you can figure out what works for you to create that consistency, to program your mind to execute the results that you're looking to get. So like, I use I am statements, and I think that that's a powerful thing that I've implemented in my life, but they allow my subconscious to work, and they also guide my actions throughout the day. And I keep adding to them and like developing them. Like, who do I want to become? And the more that you repeat those things, the more that you, alongside with this heightened awareness, it allows you to slow down time and react the way you actually want to. And you're turning a cargo ship. Like you're talking about 1 degree, like that, like you literally are turning a cargo ship around. It's not going fast. And so, but it's those small, minute, like decisions, reactions, and handling the business the way you want to. So you're showing up the way you want to on a regular basis. And it takes time.
It does. It's, and all it is creating just, I mean, a millisecond, a microsecond, an extra second between a stimulus and how we respond to that. And I can still have my moments where I feel an emotional triggered response that has nothing to do with what's in the moment, but I've created a little bit of a gap to where I can consciously catch, oh, here we go. Yeah. And then utilize some tools to where I now am in control of my response instead of a triggered reaction.
Yep.
And that's all we've got to do is get to the place where it's just a little tiny bit of a gap. And that's that responsibility. That's that control. Every day I'm choosing to invest in the things that help me feel in control of me. And the more I focused on taking control, the easier it was to let go of the perfection, the procrastination, the expectations, the attachments, the results, trying to be super results oriented or in that hustle, and all the different subtle control issues that we have. Even giving is a control issue when we're not open to receive. So there's all these ways in which we control or try to control. And it really just comes down to feeling out of control internally. And so you hit the nail on the head, is just being able to create just that little bit to say, okay, am I in control of who I'm choosing to be in this moment?
You think about like the butterfly effect or a car crash. That when you're talking through this, that's what's coming to my mind. Like if you can slow down time for that 1/100th of a second, you drive down that intersection and nothing is there. Right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah. And so we do the same thing in our actions. Like when we're reactionary, we end up in fucked up situations, and being able to slow things down and have that level of heightened awareness to make decisions based on like you being in control instead of losing control. Like, yeah. I mean, I have days simply like with my kids and I keep reacting a certain way to them. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And it's an out of body experience. Like, I don't want to react that way. And I'm watching myself and like, but it's human. Like I am human. Like I have shitty days. I'm not the best dad every single day. I don't show up exactly how I want to in every single interaction. And so, but I've done so much work that I'm aware of it, instead of just being a fucking tyrant and running around here just smashing everything and being like, our life is chaos.
Well, in not just observing it and then being able to catch it when you catch it and then own it. Like, oh shit, like I am clearly off right now. I'm going to give myself a timeout and I'll be back. Right.
Yeah.
Like, or, to just be like, wow, right? Like, but not just observe and catch it, but again, not judge it. Yeah. Like it's always a work in progress. Like, I mean, I've been doing this hardcore now since the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. And I still have my moments too. You know, there's times we're not going to be 1,000% because we're tired or we're hungry or we're dehydrated or it's hormonal. It's Mercury retrograde. Maybe it's the full moon. Like, I don't know. Like, so it could be anything, right? You know, maybe we just got that charge back, or, you know, the giant client that was like, yeah, cool, I'm coming in, pay in full, decides to back out at the last minute. Like, we're going to have, life happens.
Yeah.
Life happens. And I mean, gosh, you know, it's the toughest because kids and spouses are our biggest triggers of all of our stuff, because we let them into that inner space and they know us oftentimes better than we know ourselves, which is sometimes really scary because we get the blinders come on. And so being willing to have a level of authenticity and vulnerability with our partners, that was why it was like the best thing I ever did was hire my husband into the second company. Yeah. For us to start working together. And it was a painful first 3 months. It was really, really, really painful. But the magic was that it required us to step into who we needed to be. And because it was like, well, this is happening either way. We're launching, we've got our event scheduled, blah, 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 blah. Like this is happening. So we had to sit in the suck of we're going to make this work. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for it because it's helped me be a better leader. It's helped me to be a better partner to him. My messaging, my brand, and just how I engage with people in general now is even more authentic, more vulnerable, more genuine, because putting myself in that uncomfortable situation helped me break down some of the deeper inner walls that I was still working on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just allowed massive success. And so, right, like how much of the success we want is on the other side of the discomfort that we've been avoiding. And honestly, high performers, we're the best at it. It's why we have control issues. Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, you realize your control issues are you just self-soothing because you don't like being uncomfortable. And they're like, no, I'm always pushing outside my comfort zone. I said, yeah, you push outside your comfort zone, but you don't sit in the discomfort. They're like, oh, but we do. It's why we're like, okay, we get frustrated trying to show somebody something. We're like, stop, whatever, I'll just do it myself.
Do it.
Why do we do that? Because we're uncomfortable, not because they're uncomfortable. We don't want to be patient. We don't want to slow down, right? We can see someone struggling, but here's like the disconnect for people who identify as like high empathy or high sensitivity. They're like, yeah, you know, I just have to have the wall up because like I take on the emotion of other people. I'm like, no, you don't. Empathy it's a mirror. If we see someone in pain and we feel that emotional response within ourselves, that's our shit. We're not taking now, you know, we can get into the energy stuff all day long. Yes, we can feel the people with the bad vibes, and it's easy when we're around negative people to be brought down. Like that's the energetics. It's different. I'm just talking about the emotional space, but it's our emotion. So it's our duty to stay in an elevated emotional space because that's better support for those who are struggling. But most people, they're like, oh, no, it's other people's stuff. It's like, no, own your shit. That empathy is your emotional baggage. And so it's really, really important to understand how we're feeling and how we're showing up in these spaces.
Yeah. That's fascinating. That is fascinating.
Oh yeah, I can just go down all
I
kinds of rabbit holes.
I always love talking to you because
thanks.
so it's just fun. But you do have to give yourself the grace to kind of, because I think people oftentimes, like when you start this journey, they're often very judgmental. Like being aware of your thoughts is frightening. And you're like, holy fuck, man, like, why am I thinking that? Like, I should not be thinking that for this reason, and this reason. But like, so grace comes into play because you have to have like that ability to process those thoughts and be like, okay, why am I thinking that? Because you'll never get the answer if you can't like unpack the why. Because like if you think you're having weird thoughts for some reason, like they probably are weird. So why? Like where'd they come from? Because it's layers deeper than that. And so so most of them just get suppressed, and people are just like, I'm not interested in like encountering that. And so I'm just going to go on about my business.
I completely agree. Yeah. I mean, it sucks. I mean, I had another one of those, you know, I quite often wake up at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., not necessarily anymore like in a panic or a stress, but it's just kind of one of those times where I have a little more high energy. So it's easy for me to just get up at that time and just utilize it. But if I lay in bed, I do find I was like, this morning was one of those mornings where I was laying in bed and I'm thinking about things. And it was like creating a cascade of like negative emotional responses. I was like, isn't this interesting? Yeah. What is really happening here? So it wasn't avoiding the negative thoughts, but it was just observing, oh, this is interesting that I'm going down this critical train of thought. And then the more that I sat with it in observance, the more I got to the root, which was me focusing on someone else's actions and wins and things that they're doing. And if I get judgmental of their wins or negative or jealous, or I don't know, comparisonitis, anyone, right? It's the mirror reflection is, what am I not doing?
Yep. How are you?
That exactly. Right. What am I not doing to meet my goals? Where am I falling short? And their wins and successes are reflecting back to me what I'm not doing, but yet have full capacity of.
Yeah. Tim Grover talks about that all the time. The demons that show up in the middle of the night, and how do you sit with them and have a drink and bring them into your world? Because high achievers, he speaks specifically to this, have the ability to encounter them and use them as fuel. And like, obviously sometimes that's a negative thing, or it can manifest itself with like having to cope in other areas. Right. And, but I think we all suffer from that. It's interesting.
We do. I mean, it's, like I always say, the imposter syndrome is a good thing, because if you feel that doubt, that feeling like that fraud or that imposter, that means you're actually doing the stuff you want to be doing. You're doing it. Yep. But it's the thoughts and beliefs that need to catch up. And so sitting with the demons and making friends, I know I wrote a whole book about basically making friends with your inner critic, right?
Yep.
But when you're in that space of learning what is the message in the messenger, you can be like, oh, that's what it is, right? And actually, those are the lessons, like to circle back to where I was at the beginning, talking about being responsible for learning the lessons so I can quickly move forward. Those are the lessons. For me to be like, oh, okay, it's just some catty old shit, or this or that's coming up that has nothing to do with that person that I love and adore. I'm grateful to be surrounded by so many winners, because look at what it's allowed me to do, right? And so it's just, okay, flip over to gratitude. Number one, flip over to gratitude in any of those moments, and you're going to find a powerful tool to cancel out the negative shit and learn what we need to learn from that.
If I ever see that, it's easy for me to use it as fuel, though, because it's like I can immediately go to everywhere that I am not doing the work at that exact moment, because it's not their fault they're kicking ass. I'm super happy for them. And it's always like, you could be doing more. Like Los Silva talked the other day. He's like, hey, you should fucking post 3 times a day on social media. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I do not have the ability to come up with 21 witty things and the time to sit there. I've got 4 kids. I can't do this. And like all these other excuses. But then you look at people who have built huge followings and you're like, well, they did it. So like, where's your excuse? And so I always am able to mirror that very quickly to areas that I could up my performance, but maybe I choose not to for other reasons in my life, because of other areas I've got things going on. Because you talk about boundaries, I have a lot of boundaries. Like, we've chose to integrate our lives, like the 6 of us 4 kids and my wife, and like we work together, we live together, we travel together. It is like a rolling carnival. And we've chosen that. So when I have my moments of things, I'm like, this is exactly the life I want. Like, yes, it pisses me off when my kid does something when I'm podcasting, but like,
so we roll with it, right? It's part of the brand.
Yeah. But like, it is truly the alternative to me is misery. And so like, if I choose to be conventional, or I choose to not spend all my time with my kids right now, like that can't happen. And so having that awareness to like understand like where your growth is coming from, because you're talking about growing constantly is what you're talking about, stretching, and like it causes fear. But you're living, then you're pursuing life, because the alternative is like Netflix and sedation. And
well, I am half my body weight when I started this journey. I know, right? Yeah. Like it was double what I weigh tons of medical issues, absolutely hated myself. My marriage was in shambles, where now not only are we working together, but we've built this lifestyle of amazing entrepreneur couples. He's got his motorcycle club. I've got all the things that I do as far as like between veteran organizations and women's organizations and animal organizations and, all the different things that just fill me up, right? And fill my cup externally. And then still the time, I love my alone time. I love to just paint or color or draw and just be in my little Stacy space. And then, we can go and do all these amazing things together, that we could have this event, a week and a half ago, and bring everyone in our ecosystem into our home and say, come hang out and spend time with us as family and allow us to cook for you. And, have that intimacy and that deep connection with people.
Yeah.
So no, it's building that lifestyle. Although I always challenge everyone is, how can you find the hack to still get the desired result?
Yeah. 100%.
Right? Can
100%.
you hire the VA to organize your posts from the last 2 years? And when you want that extra content, they're just reposting, or you're just reposting stuff you already made. So it doesn't have to be brand new.
Yep. Yeah. Because it's not settling. It's like, how do you get full on integration with business and lifestyle? And like, it just becomes your life, but it is your life's work, and you're still producing, making money, helping, changing lives, right? Like that's the pursuit I'm on. But like, it takes time to recognize your boundaries though, because like, if you start letting things in that are out of like the scope in order to compromise to make another $100,000 or whatever it is, you get off track very quickly. And so it's cool. It's a fun fucking journey. I love life.
It is amazing. I mean, it's interesting because so many times people think lifestyle, leadership, and legacy are three separate things. And at the end of the day, all of those are the results of who we choose to be. And it's just one thing. I get to impact all three of those.
Right. Yeah.
Because I've created what I want.
Absolutely.
So it's awesome.
This has been awesome, Stacy. How do people find you?
You are welcome. I appreciate that. This has been a blast. The easiest way to find me, the central hub, is stacyraske.com. And then of course,
raske.com. We'll link it in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Stacy with no E and a Raske with no Y. It's hilarious. But ultimately, Stacy Raske on any of the socials. I tell people, I'm like, just Google me. I mean, there's only one other Stacy Raske in the world, and I'm the one who's famous. So pretty much if you Google me, I'm the one that comes up on everything. So
I love it. I love it. That's kind of like Jeff Smith, but a little different.
I was so happy when I married my husband, because my married last name is Martin. And I was like, yay, finally a generic last name no one can butcher, because Raske was my maiden name. However, when I got married, I actually made Raske my legal middle name. So Stacy Raske is still my name. It's just my first and my middle name.
Oh.
So then when it came to like personal branding, I was like, oh, I was literally born with a branded name, because up until a few years ago, when a Stacy married into the Raske family, I was the only one. So it's good branding, especially when you're born with a branded name. I was like, man, they were really good. We got assonance, 5 letters and 5 letters. It's like, this is really good. I know, I'm a dork.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Stacy.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciated this. Was such a great conversation. I always love the opportunity to just talk about things we don't get to talk about all the time.
I agree. I agree. Guys, follow Stacy at InFLOWential. I can't say it. Buy her best-selling book as well. It's Be a Boss and Fire That Bitch. That is her best-selling book on how she got to where she's at and the journey that she's been on. So go ahead and follow this woman. She knows what she's talking about, and she's doing big things. So thank you, Stacy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the show. Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Tactical Empire.